Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. Today, we're going to be continuing our game dev project. I see we already have 10 with us over on YouTube. Hello, 10. We're hoping to get into some game logic today that is going to involve some restructuring eventually, but we're going to start with some newer stuff. Let's check in with the kitties, though. Let's see here. We have Sky in his tree. We have Sherbet in Ember's spot, which is why Ember is over on the shelf over there. And then Sammy on the side of the desk and Mason on the bed. We got all 5. Okay. So we're going to get to HUD later, but we're going to start by attaching some game input tracking to the player, which is going to require us to have a new movement. We're just going to call it player. Extends behavior, and to extend behavior, we need one of these. Welcome back, 10. Saying we are going to get player movement in here. This shouldn't require much, because I don't think we have any extra internal variables at the moment. Okay. Let's just nab something from here. Take this. There we go. I did 10 in the future. I will note that generally I ignore any Discord friend requests or direct messages. It's most of that gets done through the Discord server. That is a collection of letters you have emitted there, AJK. As for the actual music, not really my kind of thing. Leaning a little too far into past the heavy metal line, you know? Okay, so we get our time passed, we update targeter, which we don't really care about. Player movement does not care about the target. Or at least, the base movement player. There may be other actions that get appended to the way the player moves, but that is not for now. Okay, so we are looking. I'm going to see if I can find it without having to rattle around. Is there a get? Nah. Is it game logic? That is the question, Tass. Not yet, Lunar. We haven't gotten to that yet. I'm going to have to root around and find input messages. I think we might have to relay them. AJK, we are working on a game. At the moment, we're working on getting player input wedged in. As far as movement. Where did we leave off last time? I think it's still working. Yeah, it's still working. So if a bullet directly hits a blob, it gets knocked back a little bit based on the direction of the collision. If a blob, I think, takes 3 hits, it goes away. So if we put this on there, it'll add technically a little coverage. Blobs don't go away unless they get killed right now. Add this. Add this. We're moving along, AJ. We're moving along. There's a lot of extra blobs on the screen, so they were soaking the hits. The holidays were... I mean, they were. You know, not bad, but there's so much social saturation that it can be a bit stressful. And thank you. We are at our 100th stream of development here. Yeah, you can see blobs getting knocked back, taking multiple hits. Eventually, I will need to have like a color shift state so that we can get things like flashing involved. But that's not a big hurry there. Things move faster when you don't have to make a your own rendering and physics. A skeleton boss or monster? I don't know if that will fit in. There might, we might get some reminiscent things. We might get some things reminiscent of that. Yeah. But the thing that we're going to try to do today is, one, get the player moving. Next, get some player state. So right now, the player is just an object that is dumped in first when the game starts up. But what I want is to have that player object created as part of kind of the world state and have it tracked through one of our service objects. That way we can get things like enemies that target the player. So right now the blobs follow the cursor, make the blobs follow the player. Yeah, out of nowhere, we just get, like, the Super Contra first boss, I think. First or second boss? I think it's the second boss. The big, totally not a giant Terminator skeleton. Anybody play Super Contra? References everyone gets. I found a new variable that makes the mouth tracking better. Look at that. Okay, so we either need to be able to reference the keyboard state, directly, or we need to be able to obtain that message, or it's either we need to have an entity that grabs those messages and makes them available as we go, or we need to query it during this state, as in, at the time of the delta, what is the current keyboard state? Let me do a quick look up here. Once again, we use this because bright lights, because every page defaults to white because of how the web used to be. We don't really want an input event if we can avoid it. think it might work. Let me check. Yeah, okay. Okay. Section pressed, and we need a string action, which is going to be over here. So Godot has a series of built-in UI messages. So things like you can define them yourself. You could define the key presses. Alternately, you can have, especially with some of the generic ones, you can use Godot's built-in messages. So if I use UI left, that is the equivalent of a analog stick, a directional pad, or the left key. We will want to add in, let's say, like ASDF into these, because that's going to be how that works. So rebinding will be something we also figure out eventually. All right. We might have to set up some sort of different thing as far as the input, but I think I have Krita open because I'm doing like conceptual UI scribbling. If this... Okay, so we are going to figure out how we'll do movement based on a series of ifs for now. There are better ways to go about this, in that we can we could be getting things like analog pressure, that kind of thing, but we're just going to say, is it? This is a vector 2. We're just we don't need to explicitly set it because that's the default. This equals vector 2 dot up. Okay, fine. Fine. So we're just going to add to the vector for each one of these. Then at the end, we'll normalize it, and we'll multiply it times the movement times delta. Just chair. Need the targeter update. Dot normalize. We can save. Put another way, we don't need to do that operation that way. This is a Godot vector. It will only interact with floats. It is an idiosyncrasy of the the Godot crossover into C#, is that delta is a double. Like, as far as it coming in from Godot, it makes it a double. A very, very common thing you do is delta times like a vector kind of stuff. But Godot vectors don't like that. They do not have an operation. Could I come up with a way to mask that? Yes, I could, but it means it's not. It's hidden. All right, thanks for swinging through. Okay, so if we create this as a movement, and then we apply it to the player, we should have basic player movement in place. So we're going to go to our standard catalog. And we need player. Okay, we've got that in place because it will cause an error until we stop it. That is good. Okay, and then we go back into our standard catalog. And we are loading movement. We'll change that name in a moment. It's kind of a waste to do it this way. We could change this to be a targeter. Then the player is just using move straight line. going to need to have a null targeter. Yeah, we'll just use new targeter. Okay. And then we're going to add behavior. Analog constants dot movement player. One thing you'll notice is I don't have animation states in place. The blob only has the one animation right now, so it always looks like it's moving around. But this is player keyboard motion. Can use arrow keys, can use WASD. If I drug out the gamepad, I could use that. Gamepad support, you can also see the spawn point of these is still 0, 0, and the camera does not follow the player. That is another thing we need to do with player state. Camera follows the player, and we also will be able to get... be able to get a variety of things, but player movement is now working. Isn't it nice to have it work right away, folks? Oh. I will probably make subcategories for this. Longer term, what I'd like to do is have a scripting language for this, so I can just have a folder full of enemies. We could have them both moved at once, but we would need to make sure that they stay in sync at all times. There is the possibility that the player is forcefully moved by something. Just like if we incorporate knockback, that kind of thing, the player's position or movement could be influenced by outside forces. All right, so now we need a player state service. So the inventory, the HUD, that kind of thing, that's all going to start getting merged down. Yeah. You can get pretty substantial, like, trickiness as far as little nuances like that, and I spend a lot of time stressing over minutia, but if you let that get through, then there's a distinct possibility that it will stay clear. It will stay that way. Okay, so we need player state. So we have collision. I mentioned that earlier, Copper Pot, but you know, the holidays happened. That they were a thing. I have a very particular tolerance for the inevitable social interaction that can happen there, even if it's just residual, or proximity kind of thing. Um, Ack cough. No worries, Copperpot, no worries. I frequently repeat myself. We're just going to pop player state as its own concept for now. The game state will consult the player state. Or will receive messages from, I think. Game state would deal with things like timers, what to start spawning, that kind of thing. Pause conditions, exit conditions, those kind of things. Name a car, like an actual car, or provide a fictional name for a car. Or come up with a fictional name for a car. Actual car. Ford Focus. Okay, so this will be the parent class. It's like our inventory here. A extends node TD. Okay. Does it need to be a node 2D? I don't think it needs to be a node 2D. Just consulting prior concepts here. So then we set it into service and we give it a name based on the node. Oops. By default, it wants to make the namespace match the folder structure. And I'm not doing it that way. But if I forget to correct it down to the highest level namespace, not everything can find it. Okay, and then it's default constructor. This name to player state. Then we'll need to load it up in, I think it's core or game. Startup resource will need one. Hello, Demir. Is it Demir or something else? Okay, now we need to make a packed scene. You like cats, huh? For those that arrived after the start, we might still be able to see. Yeah, we can still see all 5 of them. Sammy is extra comfy right now. Sherbet is kind of where he was. Sky is bathing a little bit. Ember also where she was, because Sherbet is where he is. Sherbet is in Ember's spot. Sherbet is top center. Ember is bottom right. Sammy is top right. Sky is top left. Mason is left center. Normally, Ember is where Sherbet is. And she's usually kind of put out looking if he's there, but she will accept the shelf. I reside in the US, Demir. And hello, Yari. Okay, so we have that. We need a packed scene that encompasses it. On the Godot side. We will need a packed scene. But until we have an actual one, we won't be able to. Is entity movement. Let's make sure it's still running here. Okay. Did not break all the things. I have been using standard, but I think base is, well, 1, it's shorter, and 2, it, I think, covers the ground that I'm actually dealing with. Is a node 2D, but this extends a player state. Okay, it currently does nothing. That's okay. We haven't defined all the things it do. So first, we're going to go into Godot, and we need to make a scene for that. To attach a script to it. There. We have a player state. Go up and we get our default startup resource. Rename that. To reattach the script to it. Have to go up and get our base state once more. So then services loads up hello lore. Instantiated as a player state. We start over here. Building. Click, click. I need to attach them. Properly shut down so I don't blow out my graphics card. Clean up some redundancy here. How's it going, Laura? So right here where we're saying add player, we're going to move that into some logic for the player state, where we'll tell it load the player kind of thing. So once the game is done adding all of this stuff, it'll tell the player state load the player. But now if we go back in here, we run it. Click the remote. There is now a player state. Excuse me. So all of this stuff is added at runtime. Mesh render needs to be a node 2D. Shader doesn't. Inventory does. Player state doesn't. Might be useful for player state to be a node 2D, though. We'll see. That is effectively a non-change. Node 2D is slightly more expensive. There is spatial stuff about it, but we don't use any of it. All right, so we're going to go into player state. Big Splody is fun. For the time being. We will come up with a way to distinguish which player to load. For the time being, there is only the concept of a single one, but it won't be a big leap to set it up so that a player has like a pre-configuration, which sprite to use, which weapon to start with, that kind of thing. So now, since player state has an abstract function, base player state must have one. So then we go into game, and we are just going to take that, and we go into the base player state and do that. Oh. Okay, now we start again. Did not get a player object this time. Oh. Guy. Oh. This guy's a little sick. Hopefully it won't worsen from here. His eyes are real runny. All of the others sneeze a little bit right now. He is clearly having a worse time of it. Okay. So now we have the player object loaded. This is where all of the logic for what happens to the player and what UI to show for the player, that kind of thing, should be living. So one possibility is that this will be the thing that determines when we deal with the player inventory. Yeah, I think so. We're gonna have the player state be the thing that encapsulates all this other stuff. Oof. Here, buddy. Ooh. It's got much worse. But might end up having to cut the stream a little short, folks. And by a little, I mean a whole bunch. Yeah, I think we need to do that. I need to check on this because he is much more sick than he was earlier. So, on that negative note, we are going to wrap up here, folks. Oh boy. All right, folks. Sorry to cut it off early, but unforeseen consequences. I will see you next time.